would only have physical intimacy and not emotional intimacy is truly with a prostitute. Now, here's why wives feel this way. A wife recently told me, and she says, Amanda, my husband just wants me for sex. And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, he never cares to have conversations with me. We never go on dates anymore. He never wants to talk to me about my day. Every time I'm speaking to him, he ignores me because he's on his phone. Whenever he does invite me to go out with him, he usually invites other friends. We don't have emotional intimacy. He knows nothing about me. I feel like I'm this guy's roommate. I feel like we're together just to raise kids and just to sleep on the same bed. And so the wife was complaining, why? Oh, but when it's to have sex, all of a sudden, he knows exactly where to come. Now, husbands, your wife needs more than just physical intimacy with you. She needs emotional intimacy, or else, well, she's very much going to feel like a prostitute. And this is why for women, remember, women, sex happens for women, 95% of sex happens between the years, meaning her mind needs to be there. Guys are very physical, generally speaking, okay? Generally speaking. And so imagine that your wife is like a fire, okay? In order for you to light a fire, I don't know how many of you have done Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or Pathfinder. Oh, there we go. Pedro joined. He was with us last time. Pedro, welcome, welcome. We loved your question, so I'm glad you're just joining us. We're tackling the first one, which is that wives at times feel like they're prostitutes. And why? Because in their marriage, they're looking not only for physical intimacy, but they also want emotional intimacy. And so, now I lost my train of thought because I was trying to go back. But the point of the matter, oh, I found it. So wives, they're like fire. When you build a fire, you have to go there and you have to collect the wood and you have to get the fire and you have to make sure it's the right kind of wood and you have to go and build it and you have to do it slowly. If you're putting a match, if it's windy, you have to cover it with your hand. You have to start blowing it slowly as the embers build. And then what do you have to do with the fire? You have to keep watching the fire. You have to keep adding wood or leaves or whatever, right? Sometimes a little bit of gasoline to make it even go. That's a wife. That's a woman. She needs foreplay. She needs foreplay. Now, husbands, you guys are like a 90-second rice, right? You throw a pack of rice in there, 90 seconds, you're ready to go. I don't know about you, but if Renee comes to try to have sex with me after a full day, maybe we argued, I was upset about him, he pissed me off, whatever. If he comes to try to have sex with me, I'm going to tell him to go kick rocks. If I made Renee angry all day, if I was mean to him, and I come to him at night and say, you want to have sex? Renee's like, wait, what were we fighting about anyways? Renee is always game to have sex. Wives, or this wife, not so much. So, for your wife, boys, sex happens between her ears and her mind. She needs to be connected emotionally with you, not just physically, not just physically. And so, in order for your wife to not feel, as many wives feels like, hey, I feel like a prostitute, like my husband just wants me for sex, date her. You did such a great job at making your wife fall in love with you because you didn't overlook the little things. Remember when you would send her that text message? When you would unexpectedly show up to her school or to her workplace? Remember on Valentine's Day or on her birthday or on Christmas that you would buy her that very special thing? Don't lose this. We need to reignite these things. Unexpectedly flirt with your wife. You know, kick her under the table, grab her hand. Do the small things. Your marriage is made up by the small choices that you make every single day. It's not these big moments. You don't need to go on this whole romantic vacation. Are those awesome? Yeah, absolutely. But capitalize on the small moments. Don't overlook it. Every single day we are asking each other one question. Can I trust this person? That's the question that we're asking. And so make sure that you are answering yes. You can trust me with your heart, with your emotions, with your body, because I am in this for the long run. Okay? And so maybe wives, you are feeling like that. And so here we go. The next one, number 2 of what I wish my husband knew is that I need him to be the spiritual leader. Now, so many wives had brought this up as an issue, that wives want their husbands to lead, to be the spiritual leader of the house, to be what the Bible calls the high priest. Now, what does that look like? Husbands, pray for your wives. Very much of sort of your wife is going to mirror you. She's going to get her cues from you. Very much you are there, the representative of God in your home, to your children and to your wife, which means, husbands, that if you are not treating your wife the way Christ treats the church, she's going to have a difficult time in a relationship with him. Discipline your children in love, not anger. Be the man of the house, but to be the man of the house, be the spiritual leader of the house. You need to learn servant leadership. And look, I know I'm going after the boys here, but don't worry, boys. Oh, great. I'm glad you've been waiting for this live since last week. I'm glad you're joining us. And so look, what your wife needs is a type of leadership that Jesus came to give us, which is servant leadership. You're not going to lead her with an iron fist. That does not work. You're not going to lead your wife with force, control, and manipulation. That is so short-lived. You need to lead your wife by what? By the influence of your character, by the influence of your character. So you need to serve that woman. You need to sacrifice for that woman. And for your family, you need to lead. Because I can assure you boys, when you lead like Jesus, she will follow you wherever you go. She will follow you wherever you go. Your God will be her God. Your people will be her people. And you will have her admiration. You will have her respect. She will desire you. She will want you. When you lead, wives follow. The Bible tells us, husbands, love your wives, and wives, respect your husband. So love that woman madly, unconditionally, totally. Focus on Jesus and his love through you. Say, Lord, help me love this woman. Help me love my family. Help me sacrifice for them. So wives have said, Amanda, I want my husband to know that I want him to be the spiritual leader of my house, that I want him to gather the family, that I want us to pray together, that I want us to read the Bible together. And look, I get that there is sort of a difference in personality, okay? I don't think I have to break it to you, but I tend to be more of the extrovert. I love this stuff, right? Think about it. Every single weekend, Renee and I are preaching somewhere. I'm preaching and he's there singing and he's playing the guitar. And so you would think that because I preach everywhere and I love family worship, time to worship, but I've told Renee, here, I need you to take care of me. So look, I love this stuff. I love talking about the Bible. I love reading. I like having conversations. I love worship with the family. I can't get enough of this stuff. But at home, I say, Renee, I want you to lead us. I need you to take care of my spiritual soul, of my mind, of my heart here at home. And because he does such a great job at doing that, I can then take it to the world and to you guys. And so husbands, help your wives with this. Do it together. Do it together. I need him to be the spiritual leader. Okay, here's the next one. Number 3. This is a big one, boys. What I wish my husband knew is that I need his help around the house. Oh, man, that's a big one. Now, look. We need to learn to do things for each other with no strings attached. No strings attached. We need to do it out of the sort of the kindness of our hearts, okay? And remember, maybe you've heard it before, that marriage is 50-50. Marriage is not. That's a myth. That's a lie. Marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is not even 100-100. You know what sometimes marriage is? Sometimes marriage is 80-20. Sometimes marriage is 70-30. Well, what do I mean by that? Depending on different moments in our lives, your wife or your husband, their 100% will actually be 80%. And your 100% might be 20%. There are moments where River and Reed have just left me absolutely crazy and berserk, and Renee will come home and he'll say, hey, listen, I'm going to be with the boys this evening. I'm going to put them to sleep. Go work out. Take some time off. Go read a book. Go watch something. Go do something. I have that. And in those moments, he's giving 80% and I'm giving 20%, or vice versa. And so in marriage, when I say sort of the help around the house, maybe you are a stay-at-home mom. Maybe your husband is the one who works. Even still, You need to help your wife around the house. And because let me tell you something, taking care of a home and taking care of kids, your crazy kids, that is a full-time job. And wives often go unvalued and unappreciated. And check this out, boys. Your wife is very much your team. She is your partner. In order for you to be doing well at work, someone has to be at home taking care of everything. Or maybe your situation, like the situation here at my home, is that both work, both take care of our children. They're not my children, they're our children. This is our home. And so we go at this thing together. And now, of course, there are different seasons in our lives. I remember when Renee was finishing up his school, there was a moment when Renee was finishing up that I was working to give him more time to go to school. And then the roles reversed. When I was ready to go back to school, Renee was fully working and I was just going to school. And because it was so, it was exhausting and there was a lot that needed my attention and I had to study and I really wanted to do well. It was a master's program. It was at Nova. And so oftentimes I would come home, Renee would come home from work, he would cook, he would clean the house so that I could come home and then I could dedicate those hours to study. So you see, sometimes it's going to be someone giving 60, the other 40. Maybe it's 50-50. Different seasons in life will call for different percentages. And after I finished school, now we were both working, we were both done with school, and we were attacking this thing together. And so support your wife and her dreams. Wives, support your husbands in your dreams. But help each other. When I say help each other around the house, I want you to sort of open your focus to around the house, yes, but also the little things. Maybe you're going to pick up grocery for your wives. Maybe you're going to stay a few hours with the kids. Maybe you're going to give her the Sunday off. Be creative. Help the basic things. Help wash the dishes. I had a couple in the abundant marriage, and they said, you know, when the kids go down to sleep, I love that my husband has done this. And one of her sort of frustrations was that she felt like she was the only one taking care of the house, and she felt like I work, he works, we come home, we're both tired, then we have the kids, and she felt like he wasn't helping her around the house. And so we worked through it, we had tools, we did the chore chart and everything. And so the husband found out, hey, I don't mind washing the dishes at all. And she didn't mind cooking. He didn't like to cook. He didn't mind washing the dishes. And so they sort of double team. She would be cooking and he would be washing the dishes. And then the husband said to me, he goes, Amanda, you know, this became like our moment, our time. The kids had gone off to bed. Usually, you know this whole thing about divide and conquer? If you divide, you're not going to conquer anything. You're just going to divide, divide, divide. So start doing things together. Don't do the whole, you know, I'm going to stay with the kids. I'm going to tuck the kids in and you do dinner. At times, I get that it's needed, but try to do these things together. So say we're going to both put the kids to sleep, and then we're going to both cook, and then we're going to both clean. Use these moments, these small, sometimes overlooked moments. These are the moments where the magic happens. And so this is what the husband was telling me. He goes, Amanda, you know, before I would put the kids to sleep, and my wife would be kind of finishing up dinner and cleaning the kitchen and this and that, and then I would go and I would take a shower and I'd be in bed, and then we would never meet each other because then I'd end up falling asleep. She would come after, she'd fall asleep later. I would wake up early, she would wake up later. They were just, you know, passing ships. But when they switched it, and now she was cooking and he was washing dishes, these were the moments where now, because they had quantity time, quality moments were happening. People say, oh, you just need quality time. Quality time will not happen if you don't have quantity time. And so do things together. Help your wife around the house. And guess what, boys? You help her around the house, she's not as tired. Maybe at night you'll get a little lucky. Okay? Does anyone have any questions so far? My wife was awesome. She supported me throughout my university. Yes, that's what it's all about. You see, it's teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? You've heard that before. So yes, there are moments where husbands are supporting wives through college or vice versa. We are a team. We are a team. And so everyone has to pitch in. Everyone has to help around the house, okay? Here's the next one. I think we are on our fourth one. So the first one What I wish my husband knew is that I'm not a prostitute. If you're just tuning in now, you're thinking, what is this crazy girl saying? My wife feels like a prostitute? Yeah, she does. You're going to have to go back, rewind, and watch it from the beginning. Number 2, I need my husband to be the spiritual leader. Number 3, that I need help around the house. And number 4, now this is one that we're going to spend a little time on. I need my husband to listen to me with empathy and not sympathy. Do you know the difference? Oftentimes, people will use empathy and sympathy as though they're synonyms, but they are not. They are very, very different. And so I pulled out here some ways to define it. But basically, the difference between sympathy and empathy is that one requires emotion. What do I mean? Empathy is more of experiencing someone else's feelings, literally walking in their shoes. It requires an extra emotional component of feeling what the other person is feeling. It requires you to go to the place in your mind. So imagine that someone shares with you that they lost a loved one. Sympathy says, I'm so sorry for your loss, that must be tough, and then you walk away. Empathy requires for you to go to that moment when you lost a loved one. And the reason why empathy is difficult and scary and hard is because you don't want to be reminded of these tough moments. Sympathy means that you understand someone else's suffering, but it's more cognitive and you sort of keep people at an arm's length. It's more happening here intellectually, whereas empathy understands it intellectually, but also makes a heart connection. It's the story of the Good Samaritan. Remember in the Bible, it says that a man, he was walking through a dangerous area. And as he was walking, he is ambushed. And there are thieves and there are robbers in this dangerous location through the mountains. And he is caught off guard and they beat him up. They steal all his possessions and they run off. Well, he is on the side of the road, half dead, and a few men come by. The Levite comes by, the priest comes by, and they look at that situation, and they have empathy, they have sympathy towards it. They said, oh man, that's a tough situation. I'm really sorry to see you like this, my friend. And they keep on walking. That's sympathy. Intellectually, they saw that, wow, that situation sucks. I surely wouldn't want to be in that situation. But they didn't do anything. They kept on walking. Well, the Bible says that the Good Samaritan, he displays empathy, which he sees that situation, he looks, he says, wow, that's awful. What would I want someone to do for me if I was in that situation? And the Good Samaritan comes off his animal, he cleans the man's wound, he helps him, he probably gives him some water, gives him some food, he loads him on the back of his animal, and he takes him to the inn where the man could get the help that he needed. And he even says, listen, I have to go, I have to run, but I'm going to cover all of his expenses. Whatever you need to do, you do it because I'm going to cover the expenses. That is empathy. And husbands, your wife wants you to listen with empathy, with your heart, not just with your brain. She wants you to listen with your heart. And here's why. Because empathy, not sympathy, will make someone feel heard. There's a psychologist, a teacher, a doctor. Her name is Dr. Brene Brown. And she has such an amazing little video. She did a little TED Talk. And there she defines empathy and sympathy, I think, the greatest definition ever. I'm going to try to attach the link on the comments when we're done here in the IGTV, and you can watch it for yourself because it's great. So I kind of scribbled some of the things out. It's like a 2-3 minute video, and I scribbled some points out. And she says that while empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives disconnection. Look at the difference. Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. She says that empathy kind of takes 4 steps. Number 1, she says, it's perspective taking, literally putting yourself in the other person's shoes, taking their perspective, seeing the world through their lens, through their culture, through their environment, through their struggles, through etc. Number 2, she says, it's staying out of judgment. Empathy is not a time to judge. In fact, there's an author that I really, really, really like. Her name is Ellen White, and she says that had people been given the good opportunities that we had, that they would often display better characters than we would. And so the opposite is also true. And I think it was David Ashrecht or Ty Gibson, a pastor that I saw, and they wrote this quote. And in my own words, they said, we have to be very sensitive to people, because if we had their same genetic components, DNA, right? If we had their same family backgrounds, their same environment, that we would be making the same choices that they are making. So we need to allow ourselves to empathize with people, and there's a component of staying out of judgment, which is hard, but we need to stay out of judgment. Number 3, recognizing emotion in other people. Now, having a high emotional IQ, which comes easier for women than for men. What is a high emotional IQ? Meaning that I understand my emotion and I understand the emotion of others. And I'm able to articulate my emotions, and I'm able to articulate and understand the emotion of others. Now, yes, men, women have a higher emotional IQ, but this is a muscle that can be trained. This is something that you can learn, to recognize emotion in other people. A lot of these things that we're talking about, what I wish my husband knew, we need to also extend grace, wives, to our husbands. I don't know how your husband was raised. I don't know what family he was raised in. And a lot of things that were passed on to us, whether it was by family, by church, by community, by friends, they were not all there. They were not all truth. And so we have to go through a period, and this is also the period that we go through in the abundant marriage course, which is we unlearn a bunch of things so that we can relearn a bunch of good stuff. And so don't make your first assumption of, my husband is so awful, he just doesn't care about me, he just doesn't want to learn. No. There are things that he believes as truth that are not truth. But when he faces truth, these things will set him free and will set your marriage free. And so let's extend grace, let's give people the benefit of the doubt, and let's shine truth where lies have been believed. Number 4, in terms of empathy, is communicating that emotion. Remember, high emotional IQ, understanding, recognizing, and then being able to communicate that emotion. Empathy is feeling with people, and empathy is a vulnerable choice. To be empathetic with someone, you have to choose to be vulnerable, and it's scary because you need to connect with the dark place of your experience. Remember, like I said, so when someone says, oh, I lost my father. Now, I haven't lost my father, but in order for me to try to understand, which is impossible because I didn't lose my father, and even if I did, everyone's experience is a little different. But I would have to, in that moment, think about, if I lost my father, how would that feel like for me? And if I really put myself in that person's shoes, and I'm thinking about all the emotions, and I'm thinking about, and I'm going through what would be the process of me getting the news on the phone that I lost my father, if I really get into that headspace, I'm going to maybe even have a reaction. I'm going to start crying just thinking about it. That's what empathy is all about, and that's why people don't want to go there. Usually, when wives tell husbands something, remember, husbands are Bob the Builders, meaning that they want to fix things. And this is not a bad thing. God created you husbands with this desire to fix, to find solutions, to conquer. Those are good things. And that is needed. But first you need to understand before you try to fix anything or anyone. And so oftentimes husbands, when their wives comes with bad news, they try to make them feel good already, and they'll say things like, at least such and such. So the wife can come home and say, oh, honey, I had such a bad day. My boss was awful to me. And then the husband will look and say, at least you still have a job, right? And I get it, that you want her to try to change her perspective. You want her to see the good. But in those moments, at least is not 2 words that you want to come out of your mouth. You want to try to find a silver lining to sometimes difficult and tough situations. But rarely, and this is what Brene Brown says, and I love it. She says this, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. Don't miss that, boys. If you missed anything and everything I've just said here tonight, just know that what your wife wants you to know, what I wish my husband knew, is that I want him to listen with empathy, not sympathy. Rarely does a response make anything better. There are things in this world, in our lives, that are so dark, so scary, so awful, so terrible, so cruel, that rarely can a response make something better. What are you going to say to someone who just told you that they were abused? What are you going to say to someone who just lost their child? What are you going to say to someone whose husband just committed suicide? Rarely can a response make any situation better in that moment. What makes something better is connection, saying, that's awful, but I'm here with you. You're crying, and I'm going to cry with you. As much as you need to stay in this dark place, I am here with you. I'm praying with you. I'm fighting with you. Responses do not make things better. Connection does. And this is, you know who does this? You know who demonstrates this to the highest? Jesus Christ. Jesus looked down at our world and he saw us in our condition, and he didn't have sympathy. Sympathy would have said, oh man, I told you guys not to eat of that tree. Oh, you guys really messed up. I'm going to be praying for you up here. I hope things worked out. Jesus does not do that. He does not respond to us in sympathy. He responds to us with empathy. He literally puts our shoes. He becomes a human being. He becomes Emmanuel, God with us, to live the life that we would live, to go through our temptations, our suffering, our pain, to go through Satan coming with everything he had to tempt him, to get him to fall, to overcome for you and me. Jesus was one who listened to the suffering of humanity, not with sympathy, but with empathy. And husbands, I believe that if God made you a man, if God made you a husband, that he will equip you to selflessly serve and lead your wife, lead your family, and he will help you. He will give you the tools to listen with empathy and not sympathy. He has already treaded the steps, and you simply need to follow. Follow in the steps of Jesus. Now, here's the next one that we're going to do here. So we did, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on our fifth one. Our fifth one is this. We have 2 more to go. Our fifth one is this. Wait, hold on. Very good. Yes. Thank you, Pedro, for being open with us and sharing that with us. Absolutely. It does take effort. It's a choice. It takes excruciating effort at times for men because, yes, you were created to solve problems. You know when a husband feels most incompetent? Husbands have told me this so many times. Amanda, I feel so incompetent when my wife is crying and I can't do anything about it. When she is in pain and I can't do anything. When she is suffering. It's kind of like the sentiment that mothers feel with their child. You know when your child is hurt? That sentiment I felt when River and Reed, they were born at 30 weeks. And so they would spend a whole month in the NICU. And when they're in the NICU and I was seeing them, I remember one time I walked into the NICU and I run over, I don't know if it was River or Reed, okay? If you saw my Instagram story today, even today, they were both wearing helmets, and I had no idea who was who because I could only see, like, this part of them, and, I mean, they're pretty much identical, right? And so, especially when they're looking like fetus. And so, River and Reed are in their little incubators, and when I came to River Reed, whoever it was, there was a nurse, and his arm, I can't how small those little babies' arms was. Like, it was so small. It was like my finger. Such a tiny little arm. And there was a nurse trying to get a needle in his arm because at that point, you know, they couldn't breastfeed. You couldn't put a milk to their mouth. They barely had lips. And so they were being fed through their nose, and they had to do all these different tests, and they had to be hooked up to machines and monitors. Oh, it was awful. And so when I looked at that situation, now, I'm pretty tough, okay? I have pretty tough skin. And maybe if it was someone else's kids, I wouldn't have minded that at all. I have an iron stomach, okay? But when I saw that nurse shoving a needle down my kid's arm, I lost it. I said, I can't go here. And so I said, Renee, you stay there. I'm going to go check on the other kid and I'll come back. When I go to the other kid, he has a needle sticking out of his head, of his scalp. And when I saw that situation, it was like straight out of a horror movie. I thought, I am out of here. I went to my hotel and I just went to cry. Why? Because in that moment, I couldn't solve the situation. I wish it was my arm. I wish the needle was in my head, but it was in the head of my children, and there was nothing I could do about it, and I wept and I cried. And so husbands very much feel like that. When your wife is going through something, a struggle that is painful, and you can't solve her problem, husbands have told me, Amanda, I feel incompetent. I feel like a failure. My only job is to protect this woman, to love this woman, to care for this woman, and I can't do it. And so wives, we also have to understand this, that God created this in our husbands. And so we don't want to tell our husbands, don't try to solve my problem. God created him to do that. But now we have to give him the right tools to solve our problems. So we can ask things like, how do you think I feel in this situation? So we want, husbands, you will be able to solve this problem. I promise you. But first, you need to understand the problem. So first, understand the problem, empathize with the situation, and then when your wife knows that you understand her, when she feels connected with you, now she will be more open for you to help her solve the situation, solve the problem. But we have to go slowly. We have to go carefully. In fact, I have a client. He's a younger kid, and there's a character development course that I do. Anyways, he was going through just a lot of heaviness in his life. And all of his family was like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And the wife was telling him to do this, and the brother was telling him to do that, and the dad and the mother and the church leaders. And look, he knew exactly what he needed to do, okay? There was nothing new that I added or that I told him. I only did one thing different from everyone else. I empathized with him. I allowed him to share his story. I didn't try to fix it. And look, he came to do therapy. What else did he want? He wanted someone to help him fix it, right? But that's not what I did at all. I simply listened empathetically. And I did the same things that I'm telling you husbands to do with your wife. Perspective taking. I put myself in his shoes. I stayed out of judgment. I recognized emotion in him, and I communicated that emotion back to him. And simply through understanding, through connecting with him, heart and heart connection, after he knew that I understood, that we connected, now he was ready for me to help him navigate, not to fix his problems, not to give him the answer, not to give him the choice, but to navigate it together and to empower him to make the best choices for his life. And that's what, husbands, you can do with your wife. Okay, so we got 2 more to go. What I wish my husband knew is that I want to be his priority. Oh, man. Husbands, your wife wants to be your priority. And now I know you might say it, and you might do lip service and say, of course she's my priority. Why do you think I work so hard? And why do you think I do this? And why do you think I do that? She's my priority, my family. Don't just say it with your lips. You have to show it with your actions. There you go, Pedro. Yes, thank you for your empathy towards this man. Yes, exactly, right? And this is what abundant marriage is all about. This is not taking sides. This is not team wives. I'm not team husbands. I'm team marriage. I want for you and your wife, for husbands and wives to have abundant marriages. And so husbands are very different than wives, and wives are very different for husbands, and that's a great thing. I love that Renee is so different than I am. I love that Renee is male, and in all of his maleness, he adds so much value to my life, and vice versa. And so there are so many muscles that we need to strengthen. And we need to be empathetic, gracious, merciful, and kind to each other as we become better people and ultimately better spouses. And so, husbands, your wife also wants me to let you know here tonight that she wants to be your priority. But you need to stop saying that she's your priority, and you need to start acting like she's your priority. Don't say it. You need to start showing it. And how do we show it? We show it in little moments. Remember, again, it's not one big choice that changes your marriage. It's the little choices that you make every single day. It's that 1% choice that you make every single day. You just need to be 1% better. 1% better. There's a great book that I read. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he gives a little illustration about, imagine that we are all on a plane. And man, I'm probably going to completely slaughter the locations, okay? But he goes, imagine that you're on a plane and you're sitting there on a plane and the pilot does like a 3.5 degree turn to the north, okay? Imagine that we're going to go to LA. And because of this so small, so subtle turn, no one's going to notice. If you're on the plane and the pilot goes 3.5 degrees to the north or to the south or wherever, you're not going to say, stop the plane, 3.5 degrees turn. You're not going to do that. So I can assure you that in that moment, it might not feel like a big thing, but over the span, as you cross several body parts of water, that what? Bodies of water. As you travel over bodies of water, you are going to arrive at a place that you did not want to get. That's the point. Little choices, little decisions, they matter. They accumulate. They build up. And so find little ways to not say it with your mouth. Find little ways to demonstrate to your wife, you are my priority. I was talking to my mom and a friend, Kathleen, earlier today about this, and my mom was saying something. She's like, your father can make me feel like a priority if he chooses, Sunday to go to the beach with me instead of go biking with his friends. And so now, she understands that he wants to do a sport. He loves to bike. He loves to bike with his friends. But some moments you can say, you know what? Instead of going biking with my friends, I'm going to go to the beach with you today, honey. And Kathleen said, sometimes I wish Will would prioritize me over soccer. And I'm not saying that now every single week he's going to miss soccer, or every single week my dad's going to miss biking. Of course not that at all. But moments where you can capitalize and shout through the rooftops, you are more important to me than friends, than work, than hobbies, than anything. You are more important to me. I value you. You are my priority. We need to be better at demonstrating this with our actions. You show, Kathleen, I just gave your example. Where's Will? Tell him to come on. I just told him to prioritize you over soccer. And again, right? Kathleen doesn't want him to do this every week. He loves soccer. We want him to play soccer. But in special moments, maybe it's your anniversary and you're not going to go play soccer to spend that anniversary with your wife. Or maybe you're going to come home a little earlier, or you're going to come home with a gift. Make her your priority. When you guys are in bed together, instead of checking out on your phone, instead of checking out on TV, make one another your priority. And finally, the last one, what the wives want me to tell you, husbands, is that if you don't know something, come and ask her. Come have a conversation. And Renee has always said this to me. He says, sometimes husbands are scared to ask because if they ask and you guys are upset or frustrated, it's going to be scary for us to have this conversation. Well, that's exactly it, right? But husbands, go to your wives. Ask her what's going on. Listen to her story. Listen to her pain. Listen to her sadness. Use that empathy thing that we just talked about there. And get to know what is going on with your wife. If you don't know something, if you're confused about something, if you're unsure about something, go and ask your wife. Ask her all of these points that I gave you. So if you're joining us now, we are talking about what I wish my husband knew. And this is the part 2. So if you missed it, you have to go and you have to watch part 1. Okay, you have to go watch part 1 because these two kind of come together. Now, all of these points that we mentioned here tonight and last Thursday night, have a conversation with your wife about it. Grab that list, write them all down, and say, honey, which one of these is true? And then husbands, oh man, you guys will be heroes of the story. You will be champs. You will be the MVP. If you heard this tonight and then you apply it in your life, we have the biggest evidence, the biggest proof that someone is trying, that someone is willing, that someone is being intentional is to see the action steps that they put behind it. So don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till next week. Don't wait till next month. Today, choose one of those and start to apply it. And so, hello Daniela, Kathy, everyone's joining here now. You guys you're coming in the back end here. We've been talking and wrestling with what I wish my husband knew. But we're about to land this plane. I said it all. I said it all. And so again, look, there's so much more that can be added. We have 1 hour here. We have 1 hour here to talk about all of these things. But again, every Thursday at 8 p.m., this is exactly what we're trying to do. I know today is Wednesday, okay? But every Thursday at 8 p.m., this is exactly what we're trying to do. Make things, make these big topics, try to condense them to give you tools so that your marriage can become more abundant. And all of this morning, I think we can end with this. This whole morning I was talking about triggers. And triggers is when you have a high emotional response to some pain that you had in your past. And that's a big one. What I wish my husband knew. A wife talked about this morning. Amanda, what I wish my husband knew is that there are things that he does that is triggering to me. And so maybe that's homework for you tonight. Do you know what your triggers are? Do you know things that you have a high emotional response to? Well, start the conversation there. Start the conversation with yourself. Start thinking about your thinking. Write it all down and then take time, set time apart. Remember, husbands, one of the things that your wife says is that she wishes that she was your priority. Set aside 15 minutes, 20 minutes, however long, to have a conversation with her. It could be over dinner. It could be a walk at the beach. It could be a walk around your neighborhood. Lock your doors, right? Your kids are sleeping. It could be a walk around the neighborhood. Find time. Find quantity time so that you can have quality time together. All right, folks. We're gonna wrap this up. I hope this was helpful to you, and I will see you next week, Thursday at 8 p.m. Let me know if this was helpful. If you are just coming here in the end and you feel like you missed it, that's okay. I'm going to be saving it to the IGTV, and you can just watch part 1 and part 2 in the IGTV. Send your comments, send me a direct message, and yeah, we're going to keep going together. What'd you say, Renee? Share. Oh, Renee said share it. Yes, if it was helpful to you, share it. We are grateful when you do that. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next week.